Hi everybody, my name is Sarita Scherpereel and I am not your mother's realtor, and this is our podcast, Shit Just Got Real Estate. And as always, I'm joined by my best friend, client, and colleague, Megan Osberger.
Hello everyone. It's nice to be here.
It's nice to be here because this episode,
it's important.
It's really important. We're going to be talking today about how to get started into real estate and debunking some of the common misconceptions that a lot of times first-time buyers have. And look, let's be real, even if you purchased before and it's been a few years, it's easy to forget these things. So we're going to be talking through some topics here that are really important as you're just kind of starting your search and maybe reaching out to a realtor.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of leads us to the first question, which is which came first, the lender or the realtor?
And that's a really good question. I feel like I wrote that one.
You did write it. And you're a genius.
Thank you. Just call me Wilma Shakespeare. So yeah, a lot of times people will contact me and they'll be really embarrassed because they haven't reached out to a lender and they're not pre-approved and they feel like they're wasting my time in some capacity, which is silly because you're not. I feel that the best way to get started in all of this is actually to have a conversation with me first. So yeah, so sometimes when we're people are reaching out to me, that's the big question that they ask, and I do think it's more important that you speak to a realtor first, because you could be 2, maybe 3 years away from buying your ideal property, your ideal location with your ideal budget. And you don't really want to waste your time getting pre-approved or turning in all the documents to get pre-approved if the dream and the goal does not equate to what the market conditions are for you yet.
And a pre-approval doesn't last forever. So it has an expiration date.
Yeah, there's an expiration date on it, and so it's not going to give you a I'm trying to use my words very carefully here because I do want people to get pre-approved, but at least to start the process, I feel that you want to talk to a realtor first.
Yeah. I think that's smart because you don't know what things sell for unless you're really obsessed with like Zillow or Redfin. And most people aren't that obsessed. So when you talk to a real estate agent, you're going to actually hear what happened. You know what something lists for, but you don't know what it sells for. So you go to an open house, and sure, we all are just assuming, well, it will sell for more right now because there's nothing out there.
Yeah,
right?
The inventory is really low right now.
But that doesn't mean you know how much it sold for. And of course you can look it up, but a real estate agent's going to actually have an idea of, okay, in this neighborhood, a 2-bedroom condo that has this and this is going to probably sell for around this. And I can show you this one and this one and this one that did that, right? And if you don't talk to someone, you only know what the list price was, or you only know what this one place that you were randomly walking down the street and they had an open house, so you went in, was listed for, and that isn't representative of a whole area that you're looking at.
Right. Or like if you have a budget in mind, targeting places and locations maybe that it would work for.
Right.
Because I'll be honest with you, when I first moved to Chicago, I had a very limited amount of experience with all of the neighborhoods in the city, and there's a lot to know. And Chicago's really interesting because we do have all of these sub-economic markets. So like what you get in Lincoln Park is not going to be the same thing that you get in, where I'm at in River West, or, where you're at in Humboldt. It's going to change from location to location. I love how I literally just went from like where we all live. Yeah. It's specific content.
Please don't stalk us.
But if you do, we hope you handsome. So yeah, trying to make sure that the dream and the goal is approachable to you, and maybe there's things that you haven't thought of or locations that, if you're not familiar with, like, let's say Jefferson Park, you have an opportunity and time to maybe go out and have brunch there sometime and maybe kind of explore these locations and drive through it. And again, if you're 2-3 years away from buying, it gives you an opportunity to really educate yourself and then have that consumer awareness where you feel confident in what you buy versus just like a realtor, sitting down and saying, okay, well, you're not going to be able to get that, from your budget currently. Having that goal mindset, I think is really helpful.
And I think it's really different than a conversation that you'll have with your lender who isn't really going to be talking to you about neighborhoods, or they're just going to be talking to you about what you can afford now and what you need in the future. But like, you aren't going to give someone direct advice, but you can say, well, every single person doesn't have 20% down. Like, that doesn't necessarily have to be your main goal. And that is a really important conversation, I think. Even if it isn't a real numbers conversation, that's, I think, why you start with your agent before your pre-approval, because it's just, you need help weeding through everything.
Yeah, and like when I have a conversation with buyers for the first time, I also give them a list of frequently asked questions of things that they need to be asking a lender. And I think sometimes, it's kind of like everything in life. You don't really know, like, the ignorance on things is, well, not bliss, but like the ignorance on, a topic, until you're really working in it, you sometimes just don't know what to ask. So my concern with buyers, if they go online and they work with, I hate to say it, but like Rocket Mortgage, like they give really fast, easy, quick pre-approval letters to a lot of people, just so that they have like a good understanding of maybe what they could immediately qualify for. But like Megan mentioned, if there's low down payment programs or something that can support, filling a gap on maybe what you have in a down payment and what your dream home is, like, let's pursue that. Let's talk about that. Let's know those numbers for you. Because the other thing on all of this is it's going to be specific to your debt to income ratio. It's going to be specific to your budget and your goals. But the most important thing that, like, I think a lot of people don't think about is the lifestyle budget. So if you are somebody, this was like during COVID, people's lifestyle budgets just like completely went away. But if you like to travel, if you like to eat out, if you like to go see shows and all of those things, you want to make sure that you're not making yourself house poor. And then you have to adjust your social life to fit like purchasing a home that's too expensive for you. So taking all of those things into consideration, I don't think that you can generically get that kind of pre-approval online from, just putting in some data. I think you have to have the consulting. I think you have to talk to a realtor and a lender to really get a full scope of this.
Yes. And you should talk to a lender.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we're actually going to have an episode about that coming up on like what to ask, how to pick somebody, but also you're able to figure out some of this without having to go that extra step and without having to show someone your tax returns, right? Like, there's still some understanding of, okay, here's what a monthly mortgage payment ish would be. Like, is that something you're comfortable with or not? A lot of people here, it's like, you might actually pay less in your mortgage depending on what your rent is or not. But you won't know that until you start actually thinking about, well, do I have to have 20% down? Do I not?
Where do I want to live?
Yeah.
What's that going to cost? And yes, to Megan's point, and I feel like have said it a couple of times,
Yeah.
like we are suggesting you talk to a lender.
Right.
I'm not saying talk to a realtor and then we are going to give you all the insights. I'm going to speak to my lane of expertise on this, which is the market. I'm going to talk about what the market qualifications of the property are going to be like, or not the market statistics and data of the sales in the market are going to be like, and then your qualifications, we're going to help each other on with your lender to try to make, piecemeal all of this stuff together so that you have a goal and a budget in mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, I think, first and foremost, that was kind of like the misconception I see the most, we want to debunk. Now, another thing that happens where I feel like a lot of times people are intimidated or afraid to reach out to a realtor to get started is because we are sometimes seen as like a used car salesman where, you're going to have a phone call with them and then we're going to be like, all right, let's get you out there. We're going to see some properties. You're going to buy one. You pick one of three and then bada boom, bada bing.
It's not like, what is it? The love it or list it.
Oh,
You get to see like two things or whatever.
This is going to take longer than an hour. So
sadly.
Sometimes though I do get lucky where like clients, especially if they know what they want, or like you were such a like Zillow voyeur that like you had a good understanding of the market. and all of those things, which actually, I mean, besides the fact that it's,
Zillow.
Zillow, late night with Zillow and Megan.
Yeah, that's
Do
my
you
thing.
want a washer and dryer in unit? Megan can help you find it in Lincoln Park.
Look at this in-ground pool in North Carolina. You've never been to the city, but you could buy it.
You can afford a lot in North Carolina, but you have to live there.
Zillow.
This will get cut.
It is helpful if you've been looking at everything, but
Yeah.
the pictures also aren't always accurate.
So I would say it's not always going to happen like that. But you know what I do see happen quite a bit is like clients will send me and we'll look at like maybe 10 properties together. And the first one, and this will be the one they have a crush on. And this was actually before COVID more than anything, because the market has been so intense recently that you see 5, you pick one, and you know, if you're lucky, you can see 5 in a row, and you might have to like stagger out the showings because everybody just has very specific times. And it's be there or be square. So what would happen was is buyers would come to me with the one they have like a crush on, and then I'd be like, oh yeah, we really like this property, and like, you know, this is our ideal, but we'll see everything, which you should, and then they're constantly having a soft spot in their heart for the one that they like, the one they have a crush on.
Yeah.
And then it's pretty common that they go with that property and buy it. So I always suggest, like, yes, seeing everything. And even if you have like a very specific set of criteria of like, okay, this is exactly what I want and these are the things I want to see, I recommend going below and above that.
Yeah.
Because then you really have a good understanding of what the value can be in your price range. And look, I know that sounds like a used car salesman way of like, okay, I'm going to try to oversell you on this. But I think what happens to a lot of buyers is it gives them consumer confidence, and then they don't have buyer's remorse to, you know, they haven't seen enough, they don't understand enough, and then they just feel like they've been pigeonholed into something that they like in theory, but they just don't know beyond that.
But also it's a way to figure out like your location. Where we were looking in our price range, there was this weird drop off. It was like a $200,000 difference.
Yeah, there was a big difference
in between what we could afford, which then meant it would need work, or what we couldn't afford, which was done.
Yeah.
And that was helpful to figure out, because it wasn't like maybe we can swing. It was just like, well, we don't have $200,000 more dollars, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so that was really helpful to understand, and it took a little while to figure it out, but there were ways around that, like if you can change your location or whatever, which we ultimately did not do. But it was really important to realize $50,000 extra dollars isn't going to be the difference for us between like that house and this house. There's nothing that we can actually do right now to be in some other thing. So it's on us to either wait, which is a really fair thing to decide to do.
Wait, budget.
Yeah.
Have your
Or
goals.
adjust expectations, or location, or both. And for us, it was important enough to move that we were starting to look at like neighborhoods we hadn't really thought about, but then we kept being like, I don't want to live here. And so then we thought, okay, we're going to wait. And then of course we found our house. But
yeah, and oftentimes, and again, shitty used car salesman here.
okay, you say that, but I've been at places where you're saying, okay, like we can make an offer on this, we can do it, but you do need to keep in mind, like the floors are kind of wavy, so that's going to cost some money to get under the house and prop it up.
Yeah, so and I think sometimes, you know, with offers, okay, so I think that I say I'm not trying to be a used car salesman a lot, because I feel like sometimes it sounds like, because, I'm a skeptical person. So, like, when I hear sometimes the things I say, I think about how, like, it's perceived to other people. And I don't want to sound like a used car salesman, but I know that there's a lot of, like, facts and data. And obviously, I don't sell shitty homes. And I feel like everything I sell, I'm always like, I would have bought this. This is great.
Right. That's what I mean. If you were
full
selling
faith
used
into it.
cars,
Yeah.
you'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's very true. The intimidating factors of like a used car salesman or somebody in sales is that you're going to be constantly bombarded with check-ins. So if you are a year away from buying, or trying to get some preliminary information, that you're going to be put on some type of a constant contact listserv or phone calls just to see where you're at monthly. And the truth of the matter is that if you're working with an agent that honors your goals and your desires and wishes and all of those good things, they're not going to be bombarding you monthly to try to check in if they know that, like, hey, it may be 6 months out, and soft touches are nice and little check-ins here and there, but they're not going to be like completely up your butt about buying soon.
You kind of want an agent who's too busy to do that too. Like, you want someone who...
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't think I'm that great at like the sales part of this, where I'm like, oh, I have to get a view and update of like a market like every 5 seconds, because I'm triggered by that, which I think is why I constantly, like, I'm not a used car salesman, because I do feel like myself being triggered by like other lenders, that are trying to get my business, that are constantly bombarding me with like phone calls or let's go to coffee. Let's, let me take you out. I want you to know what I do. It's like, I think that it goes away from the relationship. So you really want to try to find somebody that understands the relationship of what they're trying to build. So like when I'm doing multi-units, we do our meetups, we do all of these things to try to create and add layers of education. So that's this touch point. That's the email. That's, me saying, hey, I'm hosting this thing. I'm attracting you to come in to learn how to do this without you feeling like, oh, I'm sending you some bullshit email like my dentist does, once a month.
Yeah. Really? They send you an email once a month?
And a thing in the mail about like it's like a newsletter. And I love the hygienist and I love my dentist. I've been going to them since I've been here in Chicago, and I'm constantly, every time I'm in there, anytime I move, I tell them to take my address off. I don't know how they do it. They find my address, and then I still get the newsletter when I move into a new place.
That's amazing.
Because I don't care about dentistry that much, and I also feel like it's a waste of environmental
You're only
resources.
supposed to go
twice a year.
You'd only need to go to get your teeth cleaned twice a year. Yeah. I mean, I have issues, so I sometimes have to go more, but not that much.
Yeah, no, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And then the monthly emails, like the one I got this month was like it was like risking. It was like, time is not on your side if you wait. I think something like that was the name of the subject. And I was like, fuck you.
Oh my gosh. That's so stressful.
Well, also too, I
don't they know people are afraid to go to that?
Well, but I guess, that's the thing too. It's like, wouldn't that like really alarm you? So, okay, let's get that back to real estate here. So a lot of times people, are afraid to have that type of relationship. And look, if that's not the person for you, you got to cut them loose, find another realtor, find another lawyer, lender, all of those people that are on your team so that you can kind of work with the ones that are not going to pressure you into like buying. And then the other thing for these conversations that I think oftentimes people just kind of want to have like a general trajectory of the market, and then talk to a lender about like what it is they can actually afford. Like we said, the lifestyle, the budget, all of those things. But here's another thing I just want to say. It is really common that I've had clients that have approached me to buy a multi-unit, that go out, see multi-units, maybe consider what, that looks like. Multi-unit sometimes is starting your own business. Being a landlord's not for everybody. 100-year-old properties in Chicago are not for everybody. And then they decide, you know what? I don't want that. I would rather buy a condo or a single family home. Both of those things have happened to me. And I've also had people that have come to me with a single family home plan or a condo plan, and then they ended up doing a house hack or buying an investment property. So I would say it is okay to not know. It is okay to have maybe some general qualifications for what you think you can afford, and then just being open to suggestions and having the will of the universe and what it is that's out there take you away. I think that's okay, because it's not a one size fits all. And sometimes you find that, like, okay, $60,000 for a down payment on a condo maybe is not going to get you exactly what you want, but take that $60,000, use an FHA low down payment program. You could do a house hack, and then the next thing you know, you're now purchasing investment property. So, like, people drink the Kool-Aid on these things, and sometimes they just don't know what it is they can do on a market.
Right. And even if you just have a goal, like a financial goal, that can be something that you bring to your agent. Like, I just don't want to only be paying rent anymore. Mm-hmm. Let's figure out what I need to do so that I can buy something, so that I'm getting equity and making something out of my money. I mean, that's still something you can talk about and figure out, okay, well, what does that mean for you? I think that's important, because if you know even just one piece of it, you can figure out the rest through looking at places, reading up on whatever you need to know, and talking to other people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, having some type of a scope of, like, even what your sort of dreams are. Like, I think that's the most important step in all of this. So, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of an overview of how this thing all gets started and progresses. And I think that a lot of times, especially if you are afraid to reach out to people, going to an open house too, if you're on Bigger Pockets, like looking at realtors on Bigger Pockets and like what it is they're doing on, I don't know, social media or their listings, to see like kind of what equates. And like, because the internet gives you all of these back-end tools to stalk, and like see, you know, like who's going to work for you, you can do a lot of research before you actually have to have that first conversation. So if you are nervous about it, I would say do a little bit of deep diving to see, you know, who you think personality-wise is going to work for you, who's going to be like low pressure, who's going to give you the most resources, and then reach out to that realtor.
And don't feel like you can't just go in an open house and be honest that you're just looking. Because I made up some weird stories before. Completely unnecessary. Was it fun? Sure. But everyone doesn't want to do that. You can just say, I'm just looking, and it's just like at a store, you're allowed to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, I've sat in a bunch of open houses, and I think that happens a lot. They call them looky-loos. You can come in, you can see what's in your neighborhood, what's on your block. Even if it's $1 billion single family home you can't afford, you know, I think it's okay to have a market perspective that's above and beyond, like I said, you know, what it is you want.
It's good to have that so that you know, like, here are things I can afford, here are things I can't afford. That's better. And
it's also too about like, what is value? You know, for $500,000, what does that look like in my market and what I'm looking for, and what is not worth $500,000? And I think that's when you can become the shrewd consumer and really, again, not have the buyer's remorse, not have the regret of overspending, because you have a handle on the market.
Yeah, and if you aren't from Chicago, or you're listening to this in a different big city that you are not from, you especially need to do that, because I can't tell you how hard it was to spend about $500,000 on a condo when where I grew up, I could probably literally have bought a literal castle. And then I'm like, okay, well, I have a lot of space though, but no yard, and I do have upstairs neighbors. You know what I mean? That is a big shock. It's you don't want to have sticker shock when you're making an offer.
All right. Well, honestly, that's all for us. Thank you guys so much for listening. We have, I guess we should have maybe started the podcast by saying thank you. We have some listeners, and it's really wonderful to see people all over the world, and Germany. I don't know who's in Germany, but if you're listening in Germany,
Guten Tag.
Thank you. Yes. Anyways, all right. Well, catch us on social media and YouTube, and this podcast is available wherever podcasts are. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.